Good morning, students. This is your English lesson, and in this lesson, we are going to read unit number 3 from Oxford Reading Circle, The One That Got Away. Students, this is a story by Jean Mark. Jean Mark was a much respected award-winning author of books for readers for all ages. So, let's start our reading. And what have we to remember to bring tomorrow? Mrs. Cooper asked at 3:30. Malcolm, sitting near the back, wondered why she said we. She wasn't going to bring anything. Something interesting, Mrs. Cooper, said everyone else altogether. And what are we going to do then? Stand up and talk about it, Mrs. Cooper. So don't forget, all right? Chairs on tables. Goodbye, class 4. Goodbye, Mrs. Cooper. Goodbye, everybody. It all came out ever so slow, like saying prayers in assembly. Amen, said Malcolm very quietly. Class 4 put its chairs on the tables, collected its coats and went home, talking about all the interesting things it would bring into school tomorrow. Malcolm walked by himself. Mrs. Cooper had first told them to find something interesting on Monday. Now it was Thursday and still he had not come up with any bright ideas. There were plenty of things that he found interesting, but the trouble was they never seemed to interest anyone else. Last time this had happened, he had brought along his favorite stone and shown it to the class. Very nice, Malcolm, Mrs. Cooper had said. Now tell us what is interesting about it. He hadn't known what to say. Surely anyone looking at the stone could see how interesting it was. Mary was going to bring her Jubal. Jubal, a small animal similar to a mouse. James, Sarah and William had loudly discussed rare shells and fossils, the shape of a bone, a shell, or a plant that has been preserved. And the only spider in the world with 5 legs. It can't be a spider then, said David, who was eavesdropping to listen secretly to a private conversation. It had an accident, William said. Isabel wanted to bring her pocket calculator and show how it could write her name by punching in 738051 and turning it upside down. She did this every time, but it still looked interesting. Malcolm could think of nothing. When he reached home, he went up to his bedroom and looked at the shelf where he kept important things. His twig, a small thin branch of a tree that looked like a stick insect. His marble that looked like a glass eye. The penny with a hole in it, and the twin jelly babies, one red, one green, and stuck together, back to back. He noticed they were now stuck to the shelf too. His stone had once been there as well, but after class 4 had said it was boring, he had put it back in the garden. He still went to see it sometimes. What he really needed was something that could move about, like Mary's Jubal or William's 5-legged spider. He sat down on his bed and began to think. On Friday after assembly, class 4 began to be interesting. Mary kicked off with the Jubal that wait to go, fly, or revolve around its cage like a hairy balloon with the air escaping. Then they saw William's lame spider, unable to walk. James' fossil, Jason's collection of snail shells stuck one on top of another like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and David's bottled beans that he had kept in an airtight jar for 3 years. They were still as glossy as new shoes. Then it was Malcolm's turn. He went up to the front and held out a matchbox. He had chosen it very carefully. It was the kind with the same label top and bottom, so that when you opened it you could never be sure that it was the right way up, and all the matches fell out. Malcolm opened it upside down and jumped. Mrs. Cooper jumped too. Malcolm threw himself down on hands and knees and looked under her desk. "What's the matter?" Mrs. Cooper asked. "It's fallen out," Malcolm cried. "What is it?" Mrs. Cooper said, edging away. "I don't know. It's got 6 legs and sharp teeth and sort of frilly ginger eyebrows on stalks." He pounced. "There it goes." "Where?" "Missed it," said Malcolm. "It's running under your chair, Mary." Mary squeaked, make a high-pitched sound or cry, and climbed on the table because she thought that was the right way to behave when creeping crawlies were about. "I see it," Jason yelled, shout, and jumped up and down. David threw a book in the direction that James was pointing, and James began beating the floor with a rolled-up comic. "I got it! I killed it!" he shouted. "It's crawling up the curtains," Sarah said, and Mrs. Cooper, who was standing by the curtains, moved rapidly away from them. "It is over by the door," Mary shrieked high cry, and several people ran to head it off. Chairs were overturned. Malcolm stood by Mrs. Cooper's desk with his matchbox. His contribution was definitely the most interesting thing that anyone had seen that morning. He was only sorry he hadn't seen it himself. Thank you for listening. Come to the questions. Question number 1. What did Mrs. Cooper ask the children to do for the next day? The answer is Mrs. Cooper asked the children to bring something interesting to class the following day. Question number 2. What was Malcolm worried about? How can you tell? The answer is Malcolm said Amen very quietly and walked all by himself. This shows that he was worried about what interesting thing he could take to school on Monday. It was already Thursday. Question number 3. Why was Isabel so keen to bring her calculator? The answer is Isabel was keen to bring her calculator on which she could write her name by punching in 738051 and showing it upside down. Question number 4. The author believes Malcolm brought the most interesting thing to class. In what way is this true? The answer is Malcolm brought a matchbox that had the same kind of the label on the top and bottom. Question number 5. Malcolm brought an imaginary creature to the class as his most interesting thing. Do you think it was a good decision? What could he have brought instead to the class? The answer is it was a good decision that it was the most interesting thing because one could not tell the right way up. To add to the fun, he pretended that there was something in it that had fallen out and ran on its 5 legs, sharp knees, and had frilly ginger eyebrows on stalks.